Hey, how are you? We're on the ground here at KSFO in a pretty plain Jane Carenado Beechcraft Baron with old reality expansion pack, and doing this video for two reasons. One is to actually demonstrate what is right with the flight director in this aircraft and what is wrong with the flight director, at least in my installation of it, in Carenado's new Cessna Centurion, the new version for X-Plane 11. And the reason I'm doing it is because it's such a nice plane to fly, and it's a shame that it doesn't work. And the other reason I'm doing it is because some of you might not have a real clear indication of what on earth a flight director is for, because you might fly, for example, with an autopilot, or without an autopilot, totally visually, and not do the in-between. And the in-between really is where the flight director comes in. And what a flight director is, essentially, and I'm oversimplifying, is the visual presentation of what the autopilot would do if the autopilot were on, except it's not, so you have to fly it yourself. And you might ask, well, why do I need a flight director? I've got an autopilot, or I've got this great HSI here. I can follow navigational signals with that. I can set up an intercept. I can fly it. I can intercept a radial or a GPS course, and keep the needle lined up, and I'm all good. And the answer is, of course you can. That's basically called flying on raw data. However, what is hard to do, for example, is, well, not hard to do, but it takes some practice, is knowing, okay, well, how do I intercept that radial? Which way do I fly to stay on it? How do I anticipate the trend of this needle and correct for it? How do I correct for wind and keep myself on course without constant little wiggle waggle corrections? And the answer to it is, well, you can have some experience, you can practice a lot, you can know that when you're going so fast with such and such wind, and your CDI is deviated by so much, then a turn at a standard rate starting about now will get you an intercept, and then you can do this and that to hold it. And the same is true with the glide slope here. You know, you can say, all right, well, I'm coming down the glide slope, I have to be at about 700 feet per minute because I'm going at about 140 knots, and well, the needle is trending up, so I better add a little bit of power, etc., 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 etc. And you can do all that, and as a matter of fact, you should do all that. You should learn how to do all that. However, if you use, let's just turn on our transponder here, be good pilots here, however, if you turn on this little gizmo over here, it says FD, and you get this presentation here, these two little bars will move this way, that way, the other way, up, down, sideways, and as long as you match them with your flight inputs so that this matches those, you will get whatever it takes to fulfill the mode on the autopilot that you happen to be in, whether it's nav mode, heading mode, approach mode, climb mode, whatever. And this will give you in one integrated package a set of flight instructions that, as long as you satisfy the other criteria, in other words, enough speed that you don't fall out of the sky, and enough power that you go as fast as you need to and climb as well as you ought to, and enough turn so that you turn where you want to, as long as you follow these two little gadgets right here, you will more or less do exactly what the autopilot would do in the same situation. And I'm just walking through all this now because this autopilot on this plane works fabulously as not this autopilot, this flight director works fabulously as a flight director should. And I'm going to show you exactly that right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to launch out of here. We're going to zoom around, let's zoom around to our left. We're not really paying a special, no, you know what, let's zoom around to the right, come out over the water, and then what we will do is just fly the ILS back into runway 28 right, which I've got tuned up right here, and what I really ought to do is set our course, and our course should be for 284, which is almost set, but maybe not quite. So there is 280, that's more or less, that's close enough. And I will show you very, very quickly the modes of the flight director and why they're so useful. And then we'll just jump in, and this is for the benefit of Joe and Dan over at Carenado, and we'll just show you the Centurion, and we'll show you it not working, sadly. But and I'll give them the log .text and all the rest of that for this particular session. But in the meantime, I can give you a brief little tutorial on using the flight director. Again, the flight director is not going to save you from modes of flight that are not sensible. So you still need to do all the other stuff you need to do. What it will hopefully do is it will, instead of giving you a situation without one where you have a fairly busy scan, where you have to scan this and that and that and that and that, of course. Instead, these instruments in your scan, and somebody with an instrument rating can tell me I'm full of crap, and in all seriousness, tell me what I've gotten wrong here. But what will happen is when you use the flight director, with any luck, it will keep you in touch with your airplane because you're not just letting the autopilot do it. But the other thing it will do is it will relegate the other instruments more to the role of cross-checking than primary flight instruments. I know that's a matter of semantics, but what you'll be doing is, in addition to flying the flight director, and you should never only fly the flight director, you'll be cross-checking with this, cross-checking with that, cross-checking with that, and cross-checking with that, and with that sometimes if necessary. Although this will sort of serve as your artificial horizon, so you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of time on the turn and bank indicator. But what I'm saying here is that it will condense your scan a little bit, it will reduce your workload a little bit, and as long as you use it correctly, it will not seduce you into not flying the rest of the plane. As a matter of fact, it will encourage you to have a little bit of bandwidth left over to actually do a little bit more cross-checking and have a little bit more situational awareness. At least that is the aim. So what we're going to do with this is we will set a heading of 90 degrees to the west here, and that will avoid some terrain here. The other thing is we've got an altitude set, so let's just arm that, and you notice this works properly. And let's set a vertical speed mode, or at least an approximate vertical speed mode. I know from memory that I can climb at about 1,000 feet per minute and do it comfortably. This doesn't have an indicated airspeed climb mode or a flitch mode or flight level change mode that will climb at a certain airspeed, but I know that 1,000 feet will get us what we need. So let's just set that to 1,000 feet going up. And in a second, as soon as I set this, I think, there you go. Now you see how our bar is deviated here. Now I'm going to also preset a heading select mode. And now you notice our bars are deviated to the right, which corresponds with the way we're supposed to turn. So now I know when I pull up here, I should pull up, well, first of all, I should pull up to a speed that will yield me an approximately good climbing speed, and then I should more or less match it to this, and I should set up for this kind of turn. And this is set to ensure a turn to this heading at a standard rate at 3 degrees per second, so about here. So you'll notice if I match this with this, we will be going up at approximately 1,000 feet per minute, and we will be turning at approximately 3 degrees per second towards this heading. And once we get to that heading, this will level out. And once we get to that altitude, which we've armed, this will level out. So let's just quickly get going, because I really want to demonstrate, first of all, how to do this, and then quickly jump into the Centurion and show it broken for the folks at Carenado. So let's just see, our flaps are set, our trim is more or less set. I got a little bit of right rudder trim in there, and our cowl flaps are open, lights are on. So let's just quickly get going here. I've got a new version of X-Plane here, release candidate 4 of 11.2, so it may behave kind of funny, but let's just see. All right, let's rotate now. I don't have a lot of aft authority, but that's probably the way my yoke is set up. Just trim us out, and let's fly the flight director now. Gear up. And you can see we're climbing at approximately 1,000 feet per minute. And we are turning onto this heading, and I'm just going to increase the heading a little bit more, and we'll just turn us on a reciprocal of the runway. And you can see we're doing about a 3 degree per second turn, standard rate, and we're climbing, well, we're climbing a little bit more. And that is because our performance is pretty good, and I'm just a little bit hotter than we should be. So let's bring the props back a little bit for climb. Bring them back to 2,500. Even them out. And we're going to be 1,000 away in 1 second. And again, I'm just flying these bars, and you notice that our performance there and there is just about right. So let's just let's just bring our manifold pressure down to about 24 and fly about 24 squared. Okay, 500 away. There we go. Let's even out our props a little bit. And now you notice that our flight director is telling us to stop the turn, so we will. And we're coming up on 3,000, and you notice how the flight director is now telling us to stop climbing. And so we will. We'll just follow those bars on down right to there, and we'll just trim ourselves out, pick up a little steam, and again, we're not using the autopilot, but we're basically flying it the way the autopilot would fly it. And that's pretty sweet. So we're just going to fly outbound just a little bit so that we don't have to go berserko to intercept the localizer. Matter of fact, what I'll do is I'll just set a little bit more of an outbound heading. And you notice immediately the flight director guidance bars there change. All right, so there's our localizer, and fly outbound a little bit here. And I'm just a little bit high, and you notice how it's telling me to nose down, so I will. And I'm just sort of cross-checking everything there. You see I'm in a slight climb, so I need to fix that. And we've captured 3,000 feet, so that's good. And we're flying like a demon possessed here, but let me just fly a little bit more outbound. And now we will fly more or less a downwind leg. And again, I'm holding altitude, I'm flying in the direction that I want to fly in. I'm cognizant of where my localizer is. I'm sort of vectoring myself around here. And actually I should set a heading of about 100 there, so that we're roughly parallel with the runway. Just retrim just a little bit. Alright, so there we go. And this is going to fly me that heading, and when we switch into nav mode and intercept here, it will correct for winds and give me the necessary guidance here. But let's just fly outbound a little bit more, a little bit high here. And again, this is all down to me, and I'm still doing my normal scan, but there's just a little bit less workload because, especially when we get onto our localizer, because we don't have to anticipate trends. So now, let's fly an intercept. Whoa! Let's fly an intercept heading here. Fly outbound a little bit more. So I'll set an intercept heading, and we'll fly it. We'll actually come down just a little bit in altitude, and you notice I match this right here. Standard rate turn right there. Just letting the altitude decay a little bit right there. And in a second we'll switch to nav mode, and then we'll switch to approach mode, and you can see how this guides us right where we need to go. Flight directors are cool. Alright, we are actually above the glide slope, so let's just come down. Alright, and let's get into nav mode. Roll off the power. And you can see it's leading us on an intercept course right now. Bring the props up. Just bring the gear out so we can descend a little bit easier. And you'll see in a second, just trim out, that when the CDI starts coming in, we should start to get guidance. There we go. And let's get into approach mode. And this will give us the full package now. Only, where's my approach mode? There it is. Alright, so now I'm below the glide slope, and that's fine. I need to slow down, so let's guiding us upwards, and so we will follow it. Bring out a notch of flaps, bring in a little bit of power. There we go. And now we'll intercept the glide slope. We're on the localizer. Our flaps are out. There we go. And down we go. Now, let's just follow this all the way. Just going to fly the flight director right here. I still have to watch my speed, still have to watch my power. Still have to watch my trim. And I still have to cross-check this and that with this to make sure we're doing something sensible. So it's really not a panacea, but it is a workload reducer. So there we are. Down we go. And I am cross-checking now this, etc., etc., etc. A little bit high. So I'm just going to come off the power a touch. And actually that cross-checks perfectly because I really should be about 15 or 14 pounds of manifold pressure. And so that's all good. And this guidance is keeping me on this and this. Trim up a little, not that much. A little too much trim. Got a little bit of runaway trim there. That's my yoke's fault, not the airplane's fault, or it's my fault. And so we're now 500 feet above the runway, and we're again just following the flight director, staying on speed, cross-checking with the other instrument. Got a little bit of deviation that I'm noticing between the CDI and the flight director. All right, 300 feet. I'm just going to fly this down as low as I dare. We'll fly it right down to Cat 1 minimums right now. And there we are. So that's what a flight director can do for you. What it can't do is land the plane for you. That was a little abrupt. All right, so here we are. Now what I'm going to do is just slam on the brakes here inelegantly. And we'll just load up the Centurion so the folks at Carenado can see that it doesn't work. Maybe it does work, and it didn't work in the last in the last beta. So that's entirely possible. So let me just start her up right here. I really love the Cessna Centurion, and I don't like high-wing Cessnas. Real ones, fake ones, doesn't matter. I'm almost 6'5", and they cramp my head, and the view out the side, as you can see, you have to kind of lean and squint a little bit, even in the real thing. All right, so let me just very quickly show you what's wrong here. I just lose the yoke. All right, first of all, when you engage the flight director, the bars do come up. So now let's go into a heading mode here. And you notice it makes a clicky noise, but it doesn't arm itself. Okay, so let's humor it. Let's say maybe it needs an altitude set. Well, it doesn't arm either, and that doesn't really work either. So that seems to be broken. Let me just very quickly check the data refs to see if the appropriate data refs, or I think the appropriate data refs, are actually working. So that is probably sim cockpit electrical. In the mighty Saab, it's electrical and autopilot. Let's see, now this, I don't know whether this mode is set right, but let's see, avionics on equals 1, so it is on. Alright, well, that's the way it should be, and they are on, and everything else seems to work. But so anyway, let me show you what works and what doesn't, or Joe Dan, let me show you what works and what doesn't. Just really quickly, set the trim, open the cowl flaps, fuel is fine, that's cool. The lights are on, doesn't really matter, but we want to be good pilots. So anyway, we'll set a heading, say, here, and we'll zoom off into the wild blue yonder, and you'll see it doesn't work. But it's a really nice flying airplane, so I really want to make this work. Let's go flying. Tap the brakes. Yeah, I misconfigured. That's my own fault. Forgive me, I'm dicking around with this here. There we go. Okay. So now, you notice the flight director simply moves with us. Let's see if we can set a mode now that we're in the air. No, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. That does work, but let's just see if we can bring it down to something reasonable. Well, let's see if that works. Heading mode doesn't work. However, if we turn on the autopilot, watch. Let's arm 2,500 feet. There we go. And you notice, there, hold on. You notice that the autopilot does work. However, you could turn the flight director on, off. It doesn't seem to matter, because now I'll disconnect the autopilot, which is disconnecting the servos, and that works. Well, that should work. There we go. And I'll turn on the flight director. I'll go into heading mode, and we'll set a heading. And the autopilot does not budge. I mean, the flight director bars do not budge. They simply move when I move. So look, see, it's just moving with me. which is a fun game to play, but it doesn't do a hell of a lot of good. So anyway, let's just come back and land, and boy, it is a shame because this airplane just flies great. It is a pleasure to fly, and it's pretty. And it's a little too slippery for its own good, so let's just try to get our gear down, and there we go. Get a little drag out here and trim back a bit, get some flappage in. Find the airport. No, there's nothing wrong with that configuration. And actually, this makes a very good short takeoff and landing plane. It can really get into small airports. It's almost like a Cessna 172. And it just, especially with the reality expansion pack, it does fly well. Although this is not even with the REP. This is just as is, and it flies beautifully. So the folks at Carenado, whatever, have done really well. Let's see what we look like outside. Look at that. It's a nice looking plane. And I'm hands off here. It's configured, it's stable. It's doing what the airplane is supposed to do. It's just a sweetheart of a plane. So let me just turn off the flight director because that's just plain annoying. I might even not embarrass myself on the landing here. Who knows? Let's see where we are. Okay, so now again, I'm flying this hands off. And it's just solid as a rock, and that's what these planes are. This was oh, I forget who it was at Flying Magazine. It was his plane. He just died a few days ago. I want to say Mac McClellan, but it's not. It's the former editor of the magazine. Oh, this is going to bug me, and I'm not doing him any justice, but anyway. There we go. Let's just roll on in, and this is just, again, it's a pleasure to fly. We're not caring what runway we're flying into because there's no wind at the moment, so we're flying into a runway that you generally don't fly into, but about 1 or 2% of the year airplanes fly circling approaches from that direction. They'll shoot the approach to the 2/8 and then circle to the 1s, but it is unbelievably rare. Alright, we'll get another notch of flaps in. A little bit nose happy here, but that's okay. I'm a little bit fast too. Let's pitch up a little bit. There we go. Just low-fun in here. Do a little lollygagging. And grease it on. So again, a very, very sweet flying bird that for some reason has got an inoperative flight director. So let us just leave it there, and I'll send this in to Carenado, and I hope you learned something about flight directors, and I'll see you again very, very soon. Bye-bye.